The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.
It is the Morning Sports Desk on a Monday, the 30th of September. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There's Corey Tackman. Corey, a busy day in our listening area. Also just a busy day for high school sports, high school adjacent sports things, state sports. There's a lot going on. We have a loaded show today. You want to start off with some high school volleyball?
Yeah, sure. I guess I certainly can if you want. Wadena Deer Creek at Park Rapids area, non-conference volleyball action tonight. That is a, what do I guess we call it, a Highway 71 battle and a good old school rivalry with the Wolverines and the Panthers. Scheduled for a 7 o'clock pregame, 7:15 first serve tonight on the Superstation K106. That's 105.9 FM. Also on the Superstation K106 app and streaming live at WadenaRadio.com. CJ is going to have the call of that one this evening. Should be a nice volleyball matchup. And again, a good, October's right around the corner, CJ. So we're talking about 2.5 weeks, 3.5 weeks, something like that of regular season volleyball left. And once we get to October in these fall sports seasons, as you know, it's we need to be done screwing around with things. It's kind of hunker down and go time, isn't it?
It wraps up very quickly once the calendar turns to October, and it's going to do that tomorrow. For Park Rapids area, they have 3 games this week. So does Wadena Deer Creek. But after this week for Park Rapids area, they have a tournament on Saturday. So not only do they play 3 games this week, they also play a tournament on Saturday in Perham. But then they have a couple more weeks, and then boom, you're into it. So if you look at just 3 games this week, a tournament, that's 4, we'll just say games for lack of a better term. And then you have 3 more regular season games and a tournament. So you have 8, days of volleyball games left in the regular season. And remember that usually those final tournaments over MEA week, usually the QRFs are already set before those, and those are just kind of final tune-ups. So in terms of getting things ready, it's, for the section playoffs, it's about time to start looking that direction. For Park Rapids area, they are 6-6 on the season, 2-3 in Section 8AA, 1-4 in the Heart of Lakes Conference, which they are recent members of, 1-3 on the road, 2-2 neutral site game, 3-1 on their home floor. They go to Wadena Deer Creek tonight, and Wadena Deer Creek, by the way, on the season is 11-7, 5-1 in Section 8AA, 4-0 in the Park Region Conference, 3-1 on the road, 4-4 in neutral site games, and 4-2 on their home floor. Corey, Wadena Deer Creek suffered their first Section 8AA loss since rejoining Section 8AA at the beginning of last season. Last week against Holly, they're looking to get back in the win column there. When you look at the Section 8AA standings, now you kind of start to see a picture unfold here a little bit from all the teams. So if you look, Dilworth, Glendon, Felton is the number 1 team in the section. They have a 104.5 QRF and really have a commanding lead in that Section 8AA standings. Holly has a 99.7 QRF. Wadena Deer Creek, 90.4. East Grand Forks, 84.6. I think Wadena Deer Creek, and there's still enough time where things can change. I think they've kind of locked themselves in to this 3 seed right now because Holly owns the tiebreaker over Wadena Deer Creek. But Wadena Deer Creek has beaten East Grand Forks, not just in a regular season, but also in a tournament game. So they for sure have that over them. It looks like the Wolverines are kind of set in that 3 spot. And, for DGF, they're the number 1 team in the section because they've just rattled off. They've only lost twice this season. One of them was to Wadena Deer Creek on the second week of the season. Another one was in a tournament game to Kitson County Central. But since then, they haven't lost a game since September 7th, beating Perham, Pelican Rapids, Holly, Perham again, Thief River Falls, Barnesville, both on the road. So they go to Moorhead tomorrow does DGF, and we'll see how they shake up there. But overall, it's going to be a fascinating year for Section 8AA. Wadena Deer Creek in the thick of things on top. For Park Rapids area, they're trying to get their footing. They're kind of stuck in the middle right now, but do have some room to get up. Park Rapids area has a QRF of 54.1, and right above them is Perham with a QRF of 55.3. And I'm trying to do some quick counting on the fly here. And right now, Park Rapids area kind of in that 9 spot, but can jump up to Perham for that 8th spot, and then, kind of see where they match up. Could potentially jump Frazee to try and get a home playoff game in Section 8AA in the first round. That's kind of what Park Rapids area is fighting for at this point in the season, Corey. But things tighten up, and it's the fun part of the year, right? Where you get to that second half, you can realistically start looking at section rankings and kind of see, okay, is this team set in this spot? Can they jump here? What does it take for them to jump? Can a team get behind? Can a team come from behind them? And you start to see that picture start to unfold a little bit.
It's go time. Let's do it tonight again. 7:00 pregame, 7:15 first serve. Superstation K106, Superstation K106 app, and WadenaRadio.com.
All right, we want to talk about something else in the realm of high school sports. And Corey, if you go to WadenaRadio.com and the Superstation K106 mobile app right now, you can see an article in our local sports section talking about Alexandria Cardinals Alex Thompson. He commits to Clemson for basketball.
Whoa, Clemson, cool.
Clemson. He made that on a post on X yesterday, said blessed to be a Tiger, with a picture of him in a Clemson uniform.
Yeah.
Once again, go ahead.
Oh, no, nothing. I was just, that's good for him, man.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota Prep basketball, once again, sending one of its own into NCAA Division I basketball. Chase Thompson is a 3-star prospect. According to 247 Sports, he's the number 2 prospect in the class of 2025 in Minnesota. And in the country, in this year's graduating class, he's ranked as the 94th best prospect, according to Rivals.com. Not only that, Corey, I don't know if you've seen pictures of this kid, but he's tall, 6'8". He's a forward. He's also quarterback of the football team through 5 touchdown passes in their win over Brainerd on Friday night. So this guy, I mean, I'm sure he got a lot of calls about playing football too, but basketball seems like where he's going. That's a good Alexandria Cardinal basketball program that's went to the state tournament 3 out of the last 4 years, and he's been a big reason why.
Bummed for the University of Minnesota fandom that's in my bones, because it seems like a kid you'd like to have in the maroon and gold for the next, 4 to 5 years, depending on how the red shirt stuff goes. But excited for him to head to South Carolina and get to be a part of the Clemson thing. Pretty cool for him. The opportunity to go anywhere to play collegiate sports is something I am infinitely and forever jealous of. So I will not begrudge him even a little taking the opportunity to go anywhere to play collegiate sports. I will, however, begrudge the University of Minnesota for not getting him, because they got a teammate, right?
Yeah, they did. And his name escapes me for the University of Minnesota. Fascinatingly enough, Thompson, if he wasn't going to Clemson, his top 2 choices were Clemson and Iowa. So if it wasn't for Clemson, he'd be putting on the black and gold of Iowa, because according to the Alexandria newspaper, he played AAU with Iowa head coach Fran McCaffrey's son, and those two were good friends in their time there, and that played a big role into his recruiting. But ultimately, we got a chance to go to college in South Carolina. It's a lot better than playing basketball next to a cornfield in Iowa, isn't it?
He's going to the ACC. I mean, I'm a Big Ten guy for life, but if you're gonna, the ACC is a pretty good place to be playing basketball.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse. That's a good spot for him. Congratulations to him. We got the full write-up at WadenaRadio.com. Go check that out. All right, Corey, moving on into state sports. We got a lot to talk about. Let's start off with the good, and the good in all of this. The thing we need to remember, no matter what the final score ended up being, no matter what happened, we just need to take solace in the fact that through the first 4 games of the season, Corey, the Minnesota Vikings are 4-0, baby.
Let's go. Feels good, doesn't it?
So good. So good. It always feels good to win at Lambeau, the pure euphoria of that first half, the first 25 minutes of that football game, where they were just boat racing Green Bay. It was 28-0. Sam Darnold was throwing touchdown passes. Jordan Love was throwing picks. I mean, everything about it was just awesome to see. And it just feels so good. Now, the final 35 minutes of the game were a little scary, not going to lie, but they got a win in Lambeau. And I don't know if you saw a picture on the Superstation K106 Facebook page, but it's now Sambeau Field because he's undefeated as a starter at Lambeau Field.
Love everything about it. I don't know if you follow along with like the win probability stuff throughout the games.
Only when it collapses, impressive.
Right. But I know it felt closer than this, but the win probability for the Vikings never dropped below 80%.
The Packers never, at any point in the game, unless you count their opening drive, which they could have got a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, at no point were the Packers with the football having a chance to take the lead.
Correct. Just dominant. Now, people are gonna the final, that second half got interesting, and second half plus when you consider the muff punt. But I think probably if Naylor just lets that thing go over his head or just catches it, the final score of that game is 42-0. Obviously, didn't catch it. It got weird. Green Bay made it interesting. They deserve all the credit for making it interesting, for sure. But when you're up like that your defensive mindset changes completely, entirely, and utterly. And what you are trying to accomplish on offense changes completely and utterly. Like I had a buddy of mine who is an incessant texter when it comes to Vikings football games, especially when things start to get weird. And it was funny to watch him. Like, he couldn't decide between, would you just run the ball, please? And every time the Vikings would run the ball and have to punt, he would say, boy, we just can't draw anything up to get a first down. So which one is it here, fella?
It's a fine line. Well, especially considering, remember the last head coach that we all wanted out of town, we all got mad at him when they'd be up in the second half. It's like, why are you running into the center for 3 plays and punting?
Right. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard when the game is that out of control as it was, and it's hard to take your foot off the gas and then press it back down again when you need it. But when they did, an impressive drive to get that final score to extend the lead out like they did. I don't know. I'm just thrilled, CJ. I'm just thrilled. My favorite team is 2/3 of the way to the number of wins I predicted. And if they get to the number of wins I predicted for the year, it's going to be a sad final 13 games.
Well, I predicted the Vikings to go 8-9. So they're halfway there on mine. And here's the thing, for them to play 8-9, they'd have to go 4-9 in their final whatever games. And not that it's not possible, because we've seen Vikings teams do that before, because somebody had a stat basically just around this phrase of, you don't want to know the last 4-0 team to not make the playoffs in the last 8 years.
Correct.
It was the 2016 Minnesota Vikings, but they collapsed because one, Zimmer was a head case and definitely did not handle the locker room correctly that season. But also, I mean, the offensive line had JT Clemmings blocking for cinder block feet Sam Bradford. And Bradford played great, all things considered, but had no time to actually survey a field. The things that made that season go awry are very unlikely to happen, at least at that level for the Vikings, considering the personnel and the coaching that's in place now. But here's the thing. We talked about this before when the Vikings started the season 2-0, but they just build credibility to have things go a little wrong, and they have that cushion to be able to figure things out without panicking. Like last year, the Vikings started at 0-3, and it's like, okay, well, they can still make the playoffs, but they need to go 10-4 the rest of the year, and they need to play like a top team in the NFL the entire year long. Now it's like they just have to play. If they go 500, let's say they go 6-7 the rest of the way, that's 10-7 making the playoffs.
Right.
Like if they go 7-6, that's 11-5 or 11-6.
Yep.
Like the thing is that if they just play like an average football team the rest of the season, they're going into the playoffs. And if they keep it up at this rate, well, we're going to need to start talking about other things. But last year, or even the final 3 years with Zimmer, it was always, oh, you started 1-3 or 2-4. Oh, you won a bunch of games in the middle. Cool. You got back to 6-6 and you finished the season at 8-8, a game out of the playoffs. And then they go, oh shoot, we just missed. But it's like, look at how we came back at the end. But it's like, you dug yourself in a hole. You still did that. You get props for digging yourself out, but you still put yourself in there. And Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings did that last year, starting 1-3. But now, when you're 4-0, it's just so much better. You just have that. And in a season where now all of a sudden the Packers are 2-2, and if the Lions lose tonight, they're 2-2, and it's like the Vikings already have a game in hand on the Packers. Now all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, this path to the playoffs, not that it's impossible, but now they have to play like a better football team the rest of the season. It's just a good position to be in.
It's a really good position to be in, and they are. Again, the second half notwithstanding, because it was weird, and I think we all understand and can kind of take the weirdness with a grain of salt, right? They're just a super complete football team, and they can do things like march down the field, and here's 4 yards. They can also have 4 plays in a row and get 4 first downs in a row. They can have, on the opening drive of the game, have a 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 12, whatever it is. And then Naylor is just wide open for a 25-yard pickup for a first down. You're like, what is going on? And then defensively, they're so disruptive. Green Bay did a pretty decent job of handling some of that disruption in this game.
Especially in the second half. But it's not like, there's pockets in every coverage. And if you're not sending, a typical Brian Flores, here's 8 guys at the line, pick which 5 are coming kind of a deal. There's the second half is kind of notwithstanding in all of this. They're a really complete football team. Their kicker's good. Their punter's good. They kind of have every piece going right now. Yeah, I mean, well, look at Green Bay. They had a kicker that missed 2 kicks, and that would have been very important for them. And the Vikings took one.
Couldn't stop throwing it to the other team.
Right. Did you see before the game, Jordan Love showed up in a Brett Favre 1990s jersey?
Yeah.
And there's one that I don't want to say on a microphone that's on a recording that'll be out on the World Wide Web that I thought was hilarious. But there was a second one where it was like no quarterback has thrown for 3, I think it was like 4 touchdowns in a game while also turning the ball over 3 times since Brett Favre in 1997.
I know, it's amazing.
So it's like, all right, well, a good homage because Jordan Love is, closer to Brett Favre than Aaron Rodgers just in terms of play style. It's a lot of epic go deep kind of play.
Right.
And it got them back in the game, and it also lost them the game. And even though the Vikings didn't get sacks, they only got 1. They did get pressure, and there were plays where Jordan Love was getting hit and getting smacked. And there were things that the Vikings were doing in that game. But, yeah, they were the more complete team. I saw Packers fans being like, well, if they make their field goals and if they do this and if they do that, and it's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the Vikings can turn around and say, Vikings fans can say, well, yeah, if Jalen Naylor doesn't muff the punt, and if Sam Darnold doesn't throw a pick in the red zone, and if
it's a really different game if all of those things are true.
If my team just played perfect, we would have won the game. I don't know what everybody's so upset about. I don't know why Vikings fans are so high on their own supply here. If the Packers didn't play like crap for an entire first half, we would have won that game. Oh, weird that you didn't win the game.
I know.
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I get Jordan Love, by the way, not wearing an Aaron Rodgers jersey because that guy's still in the league. But is picking a Brett Favre jersey right now, is that the move? Is picking the jersey the guy who defrauded the entire state, the jersey you want to just be sporting around? Is that why can't you throw on a Reggie White jersey?
Well, Jordan? Maybe it's because it's the first game. And I'm saying this a little tongue in cheek, but it is the first game since we found out Brett Favre has Parkinson's. Maybe that was something to go in with it.
Maybe that sure, fine. But you know what? Nobody's wearing an O.J. Simpson jersey. Josh Allen's not showing up in an O.J. Simpson jersey in Buffalo. You know what I'm saying? Like we're doing this. That's
how many yards he rushed for though in a 14-game season.
I know it is pretty impressive.
2,000 yards in a 14-game season.
That guy really could run away.
Up until the point where he couldn't. But really, and you brought up a point to this, and you already touched on it, so I just want to say this and move on. Kevin O'Connell said in his post-game press conference, because he's like, I know there's going to be people that are going to say, well, why didn't you just run the ball more in the second half? Because the Vikings did let the Packers into the game by throwing a little bit, but we also got mad at Mike Zimmer for running the ball, and we get mad at PJ Fleck for just sitting on leads. And, like, there's a fine line that fans have. They want just to call the plays that work all the time. And O'Connell basically said, I believe that we still needed to throw, and we needed to keep our foot on the gas, and we don't want to get complacent. And that basically O'Connell said, he didn't mean that. I'm not saying this abrasively, or I don't think this came off as abrasively, but he basically said, look, I know people are going to get mad at me for the way I called that second half, but he's like, I'm okay with it, and I'm going to do it again. Like, that's, well, he's going to want to pass. You have Justin Jefferson, you have Jordan Addison, you have Sam Darnold throwing the football. He's like, we're not just going to run 3 running plays and punt.
Well, there's first of all, you play to win, right? That's the old Herm Edwards line. Like, quit playing to not lose. We appreciate appropriate aggressiveness out of our teams, like you should. And there's the really good example of this is, I know a few people who didn't like the play calling and the previous possession, offensive possession before the Naylor muff punt. Okay. But the point that happened in all is, sure, maybe, okay, we weren't aggressive enough there or whatever, or we didn't make this. The point is the defense then still had to force a punt. So, like, you may not have liked, but, like, things were working out the way they were supposed to. I just don't know. I don't like this. We're judging results again here a little bit, and results are important. CJ, I can't say that they're not important, because they 100% are, because if you don't get the results on individual plays, you're not going to get the overall good results you're looking for that lead to a win. But I didn't have anything in my head when I was watching this that was like, there's one play that I didn't like, and I didn't like they didn't kick the field goal at the end of the game.
See, I agree with you, or like I get your reasoning. I don't disagree with your reasoning. I actually don't mind it, because don't let them go 90 yards in 4 plays.
Everybody I've talked to agrees with you. I'm the only one but like, I said it out loud to my wife so I could come here and say to you, there's evidence, there's proof at my house that when push comes to shove, when this doesn't work, I've already said it out loud. I just take the field goal and make him score twice. Was my
We'll make him get 2 touchdowns, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Make him to get 2 touchdowns instead of a touchdown, because all they needed to do was recover an onside kick and kick a field goal, and they win the game, right?
Right, exactly. And it's so hard. Game theory is so fascinating, because again, that's KOC's playing to win. If they get the touchdown, the game's over. And do you trust your offensive line to get a yard? And now I don't necessarily know if going east. I mean, the Vikings tried to go east-west running the football all game long because they did not trust Kenny Clark versus Garrett Bradbury.
Sure.
They just knew that was a losing matchup. But going east-west on a 4th and 1 is never the play, in my opinion. But it also didn't work out. The Vikings went east to west on a jet sweep, and Jordan Addison ran it into the end zone earlier in the game. And Jordan Addison,
I should say.
Jordan Addison put that guy in a blender, by the way, for Green Bay. And then put a different guy in a blender running a little hesitation route as he goes like 10 yards, kind of quick, slows down, and then turns the Jets right back on and is wide open for Sam Darnold in the end zone. And Jordan Addison coming back, we kind of forgot about it because they've been winning, and Jalen Naylor played nice in his absence. But Jordan Addison coming back was just – because Justin Jefferson was pretty quiet for most of the first half.
Well, it turns out they cover him.
Right. And Jordan Addison had a lot of man-to-man matchups, and it made him pay.
It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter who's the other receiver. There's only one person you need to stop, and that's Justin Jefferson. He's the best receiver in the league. The other receiver could be Cooper Kupp, and you're going to have to make your choice. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it could be Jamar Chase on the other side. You're going to have to pick one. You're probably going to elect to stop Justin Jefferson first.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan Addison has just done a nice job as being that wide receiver too. That guy could be a wide receiver 1 on over half the teams in the league at least. And he's the reason why Kenny Pickett was a 1st-round draft pick, because Kenny Pickett was throwing him footballs at Pitt. and
Right.
he won the Biletnikoff Award or whatever it is for the top wide receiver. So,
Right.
like, that guy, he's good. And I think sometimes it gets overshadowed because Jefferson is the best in the league. But having him, and imagine once you get Hawkinson back, like, this offense can still do stuff, and they're not quite at full strength. It's going to be interesting. One last thing, and then we'll move on here. Two things. One, Will the Thrill. He's just a dorky-looking kid out of Alabama. Looks exactly like a white kid from the South would look like at this point in 2024. Has Walmart ads, has Crocs ads, and just makes kicks. And I've never been concerned about a kick yet, which is concerning because he's going to miss one at some point. We'll see how the fan base reacts, but he's been good. The last thing, did you see that throw to Darnold to Jefferson in the end zone? Like, somebody said Jefferson catches everything his way, but on this one, he had no choice but to catch it. Darnold literally threw it at his chest, and it just was there.
Stupid throw, stupid catch. I was waiting for the replay on that touchdown play because, like, I don't know how he caught that ball.
Kevin Harlan didn't even think he caught it. Listen to him in that call. He's like, and touchdown.
The ball couldn't have been anywhere else. It couldn't have been anywhere else, which is probably, as Bob Ross would say, a happy little accident. But it was thrown perfectly. Because there's nowhere else that could have. He had no hands available. He was bear hugging the defender. And the defender was bear hugging. There was nowhere to go with that ball except somehow accidentally drop it perfectly over the shoulder pads into his chest so he could, with one hand, just be like, oh, yeah, touchdown.
It's the closest thing. Remember when the Vikings played in Lambeau in 2018? It was Kirk's first time playing the Packers as a member of the Vikings, and he threw a ball to Thielen. I think it was for a touchdown. It's not the exact same, but it's very similar in terms of, like, you could throw that throw a million times, and it's only working once, and we live in the universe where that throw worked. And that's the same thing. Like, and this is the thing of, we talk all the time of, like, just throw Jefferson the football, just get it in his general direction. That big third down catch Jefferson had on the field goal drive to keep them alive and to burn a little more clock, or maybe it was on the one where they get stopped at the goal line. But either way, it's like big first down. They needed it, and he just makes a big catch on the sideline. Like, just throw it to Justin Jefferson, man.
You don't even need to throw it reasonably close.
He'll just get it.
The catch, Addison made a great catch. I don't know. He hung in the air for like what felt like a full 2 seconds. You don't even need to be reasonably close on some of these throws. and the good news, the reality is Darnold is not highly renowned for his accuracy. So that's good. This is a good combination here.
They go to London to get a spot of tea with Aaron Rodgers next week.
Governor.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. 8:30 kickoff. I hate it, but we go.
7:30 pregame, Superstation K106.
We finally moved the program, our CT40 with Fitz, so the Vikings don't interfere. We can let people listen to the program at a consistent time, and then the Vikings decide to play a London game.
Sorry. You know what, Fitz? Next week it's all yours, buddy.
It's the bye week. It's all yours. Vikings very well could be 5-0 going into the bye week because Aaron Rodgers decided to lose to I'm going to throw for negative yards in the first half. Bo Nix.
Yeah, there was some weird discourse on him, social media. I don't watch really any other games besides the Vikings anymore. Like, I'll turn on the Monday Night Football games tonight, whatever. Mm-hmm. But
I didn't really see any highlights, but I don't think there were any from that game.
A lot of no. A lot of, like, Rodgers is kind of known for his back foot throws, and he's got a cannon. But a lot of, like, why is he's not throwing the ball down the field at all, and everything he is throwing is underneath off his back foot. And who knows? I'm sure
maybe because his offensive line is terrible.
Yeah, and probably most importantly is just all leading to Saleh being fired. Is really all this is. It's just all leading to him being fired probably before the end of the season. Or
if he doesn't, they'll limp into the playoffs as like a 9-8 team, make it, gets one more year, Rodgers retires, and then he gets canceled.
Yeah, there's no guarantees on the Jets season. They could still end up being awesome. Because remember a week ago, everyone was like, Aaron Rodgers is back. Mm-hmm. I mean, how things change over the course of the week. Probably.
Also, they're only 2-2 through the first quarter.
Saleh's gone. and Sirianni's gone.
That guy's, he's not lasting in Philadelphia. That guy embodies Philadelphia. Remember when they were winning? It's like he embodies the Eagles. Look at him. He's got the FU personality. And then when it came down to like, all right, times are tough. We need a grown up in the room. He's trying to yell at fans. And it's like, all right. Like when somebody made the point of like when Jalen Hurts has to be the adult in the room over his actual coach, it's not a good, like Jalen Hurts is an adult. But when that guy has to be the one calming down his head coach, like that's, it's like when the middle manager has to always keep his boss or her boss from doing something. If you're
bawling your eyes out at the national anthem because you're in the Super Bowl, what we all thought was like, oh, look at this guy loving the moment. Turns out he's probably just a little too emotional for that job.
He might be. That's great for assistant coaches, as we've learned. Horrible for head coaches, as we've learned with one coach who got a little emotional in his tenure as the Vikings head coach. All right, we got a couple things quick. Corey, Lynx fall in the first round or the first game of the second
semifinal. Yeah, they lose to Connecticut. Connecticut, I think, is just a tough matchup for them. 73-70 was the final score, but it's not like they didn't have chances in that one to score. They just could not buy a bucket down the stretch. I mean, just shot after shot after shot. That was like a brrr, and then bounce out. Kind of a tough one, but they turn around and play again. They host Connecticut for game 2 tomorrow night. I'm loving these Sundays, the last couple Sundays, of being able to watch the Vikings in the afternoon and then the Lynx somewhere following. This is awesome.
You didn't watch the Twins in between?
The who?
Yeah. You didn't turn them on the old radio?
Whom are we talking about?
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the Twins here for a second, Corey. Let's wrap up the show talking about the Minnesota Twins. So obviously they got eliminated. And remember when we said they needed to go 4-2 in the final week and they get in?
Correct.
If they would have won 4-2, they would have got in. Kansas City won one game in the final week. They would have gotten in.
Yep.
And they kept collapsing. That I just am frustrated about that because at first I kind of threw it out. I'm like, well, maybe Kansas City would have won enough games and it wouldn't have even mattered. No, Kansas City was begging for you to kick them out, and the Twins were like, "No, that's okay. We want to go to Cancun. We'll see you later. We're out of here." Frustrating. So another frustrating thing is the Twins trying to news dump their way out of this mess because in the middle of the final game of the season, Falvey and team president Joe Pohlad, or CEO Joe Pohlad, do their like end of year pressers, and they did it in the middle of their final game of the season, in the middle of the Vikings and Packer game. And if you don't think they didn't do that on purpose, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you because they knew exactly what they were doing, putting that out there at a time when nobody would even notice what was going on. But here's what happened. First of all, Derek Falvey said that Rocco is coming back as manager, that he is going to stay. And well, there's people that won't like it, and it's not that I would have been upset at a change. I don't think Rocco deserved to be the fall guy for that entire debacle. And also it's the Twins and they don't fire anybody.
I'll take it one step further. I have no issue at all with I would have actually want, like, you're firing that guy for what?
Right. He's the guy that's fallen on the sword here.
Yeah, exactly. You need somebody to distract from what the real issues are.
I mean, the Twins have had 4 managers in like 40 years. So like outside of, I mean, the Molitor era was a little tough because that was it was in between moving from Terry Ryan to Falvey and Levine. So that's a little more like the Twins probably would have kept him around if basically the new guys that came in just were not completely different philosophically speaking, but wanted their own guy. But like Gardy was there for, longer than maybe a manager should have been. Tom Kelly was there forever after the World Series in the 90s and he earned the right to basically say when he was going to be done. And the Twins just don't, for better or worse, they are level-headed in that. And it's probably just because the Pohlads don't really care that much. Like, they're like, yeah, sure, let him manage again. I don't know. Do you think, and Falvey is like, again, if they fire Baldelli but keep Falvey in place, they're going to hire somebody who's almost exactly like Baldelli, and the fan base is going to hate that guy. So like, or all the fans that want a Rocco gun, we're going to hate that guy. But so that's whatever. That is what it is.
Rocco didn't have nothing wrong in terms of like you could nitpick individual decisions, and nitpick is even like you could criticize individual decisions.
Yeah, he's worthy of criticism.
Absolutely. There's too many other things going on here.
Did the team
maybe they're self-aware? They're not. This is a mess, CJ. It's a mess.
All right. So here's the piece de resistance of this entire Twins debacle. Again, I've heard other people say this before of Score North. Judd Zolgad pointed this out, and I agree with him. It's just, I get what they probably thought they were doing the right thing by doing it during the Vikings game. And for them, it's smart to do all their stuff now. But just the message it sends is so cowardly that they collapsed. And then the time to face the media and to face the fan base, they hide during the middle of a time when they know nobody's watching because everybody's watching the Vikings-Packer game. And they're just hoping that nobody really pays attention to this and they can just kind of skate by. And then they won't talk to anybody until spring training again, at least in terms of ownership. It's what they tried to do, and they got away with it in that sense. But Aaron Gleeman did ask Twins ownership on this. He has the full transcript on his Twitter page talking about it. So I'm just going to read you what it says, and we'll just move on. Gleeman said, quote, "You said you have to make business decisions, but does a sports franchise necessarily need to be treated as a typical business? Or can it be treated as part of a bigger community and you're the stewards of something that involves thousands of people? As you look forward, is this going to continue to be treated as just revenue went down, payroll goes down? Or is there a different view of a sports franchise? You own a lot of businesses. Is this just one of them, or is this potentially viewed differently?" Here's Joe Polad's response. "No. I view my job as running our business on behalf of this team and our fans, and I'm trying to manage our business so that we can put out a winning team, both in the short term and in the long term. And sometimes things come up when whether they are a number of different things, I'm not going to get into them, and then decisions need to be made. I'm not going to get into these types of decisions, but it is both long term and short term in terms of how you were describing it, Aaron. So yeah, the goal is always to have a winning product on the field where fans can come and get excited about the team." And then Gleeman follows up. "Because of the performance on the field, but also fan morale coming into the season, I'm sure whatever your internal projections were for revenue fell at least somewhat short. Does that almost become a cycle that if you lower payroll, fan morale, and the performance on the field goes down, and then at the end of the season you say, well, revenue went down, so we need to lower payroll again, and it just repeats itself?" And Joe Pollard said, "If we have a winning product, regardless of what our payroll is, I think fans will come out." And then Gleeman responds again, "Sure, but there is some relationship between revenue and record, which is true. Teams that spend more do win more. And when you miss the playoffs by a few games, it's fairly straightforward to say, would X number of millions have helped that? So as you look forward to next season, is this going to be similar in terms of resources given to the front office?" And then Joe Pollard said, "I'm not going to get into payroll right now, but we will have a better product on the field next year," which again is they're just running away from the fact that they effed up this season and they're not going to take accountability for it. And its ownership messed up by not giving front office resources. The front office, with what little resources they had, did mess up. All of their bullpen additions were awful, and they all did not make the team by the end of the season. And as we talked about, Rocco is ripe for some criticism as well. But this starts from ownership on down, and basically I think they're going to have the same payroll this year as they did last year. So it's not going down, but like who's excited for the next season of Twins baseball?
Can you read the very last line of that again? The very last line.
"I'm not going to get into payroll right now, but we will have a better product on the field next year."
How?
They just will.
How? How?
Yeah.
Are you going to pay for better players? No.
Well, and this is...
Are the guys who are perpetually hurt going to all of a sudden miraculously, all of them be healthy? Probably not. Are the guys who have already had career years going to have a second coming of a career year? No. How is it going to be better than you are crossing your fingers and hoping that this wasn't the worst case scenario, which you manufactured yourself?
Right. I don't know. They don't know. and they're just saying the corporate answer. And here's the thing, and Pohlad has said basically this was business decisions and this is business, which is true. He's being truthful, which I give him props for that. But it's like when you're in high school and the girl you like,
he's too stupid to answer it tactfully. That's why.
That's pretty much what I'm getting at in this point here, because it's like when you have that girl you like in high school and she asks you, hey, do you think I look, or do you think, whatever, for lack of a better term, do you think I look fat? You know what I mean? And maybe she is, maybe she isn't, you know what I mean? But it's like, there's a way to answer that question.
Yes.
There's a way to answer the question. Like, you don't have to flat out, I mean, you could just flat out lie. But like, there is a way of tactfully answering this question. Sometimes your wife will ask you a question, Corey, and you want to be truthful, but you also know that like you have to answer the truth very carefully. You can't be blunt sometimes about things, whether it's your wife or kids or parents or anything. There's certain times you just can't be blunt.
No, you can, and that's if you don't care. You can tell your girlfriend those jeans make her ass look fat. If you don't like her and you're never gonna get married, you can absolutely do that. If you don't care about the repercussions of the truthful answer, you can say this is about business decisions and nothing more and nothing less. If you don't care about the product that's actually on the field or the people who are supporting that product.
And let me put it to you this way too, because like Gleeman did mention, if you spend more money, it's not even like they would have had to spend $30 more million, which they cut the payroll by. But when the trade, because the Padres significantly cut revenue to the point where they had to trade the second or third best player in the game in Juan Soto to the Yankees. You think they wanted to do that? They had to cut payroll. But you know what happened at the trade deadline? They realized they were competitive, and then they got a bunch of resources. Ownership greenlit them temporary resources. The Twins were given no temporary resources at the deadline. But giving the Twins $5 more million to go get a better reliever, just one better reliever, they're in the playoffs. They're in the playoffs.
We talked about this all the time. Your championship window it's a kind of a bogus.
It sometimes gets a little glorified, I think.
Right? They talk about like, oh, this 5-year window. There's no 5-year window. There's only an immediate window,
especially in baseball.
And this Twins, I think it's like that in every sport. You are either in it or you're not currently. That's it. And coming into the season, the Twins were currently in it, coming off a division championship from a season ago. They come into this season in it. They're at the All-Star break in it. They're at the trade deadline in it. 0 things happened. The walls around Jericho came tumbling down, and so did everyone's hopes and dreams.
Right. And by the way, there is a case to be made, I think, of a like soul searching from a fan base of like, there was not a huge attendance bump in 2022 when the Twins re-signed Byron Buxton and added a top 3 shortstop in baseball in Carlos Correa. There is a little bit of like, and we've talked about this before, like on the show of like, there does need to be some like is there a world where it's like, hey, should the fans also get behind a team and say, we're going to support you? That's true. And I think there's an argument for that. But also, what has this ownership group done to reward those fans who do show up and do go? They don't. And they don't have their games on TV. They pocketed the money, and then they didn't invest it in the team, which is what he means. The short and long term. It's why even though the Twins remember we talked about this at the time, the Twins got the money from Bally. That was close to like probably 80% of what they get in a normal year, which is around like $50 million, probably 40 to 50 million they got from Bally to broadcast this season of Twins baseball. None of that was you couldn't even put $5 million to go into the roster construction of this team. No, you pocketed all that. And not only that, we don't actually know how much money the Twins did get because they and Bally definitely did this at the Twins' request. Hey, let's not make this financial disclosure. This financial transaction, we are not allowed to disclose that number. They kept that number in the dark for a reason because they knew that we are going to go, oh, cool. You can invest a little bit in the team. And they go, no, it's a business. And I don't necessarily hate look, it is a business. They can't the Pohlads are billionaires and they are like, in terms of just ownership net worth, they are one of the richest owners in baseball, ownership groups. I'm not saying they need to bleed themselves dry every single year to put a baseball team on the field. I get it. This is the real world. But also, like we talked about the Padres, they cut back payroll, and then they saw themselves an opportunity to win and said, okay, fine, this season. But if the Padres were 10 games below 500 at the trade deadline, you think they tell their GM, hey, man, go crazy. Let's get some pieces to get back in this thing. They say, no, man, not this year. But the Twins couldn't even do that. They were, at the trade deadline, Corey, they were one of the best teams in baseball. It's not like they were hanging on 6 games back of a wild card spot. They were the best team in baseball. One of the, at that period in time. And this front office is like, nah, you don't need any more investment. Because they don't care. They just don't care. And then they're going to turn around and then they're going to complain about attendance this season. And then it's going to go down again. And then they're going to say, and like Lehman talked about, it went down again. Well, I guess that means we need to cut payroll since nobody's coming to games. And we got to make sure we turn a profit. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the Twins, the Pohlad ownership group has been a PR nightmare. From contracting the franchise to give us target field and we're going to increase spending, to increasing spending, to now basically proportional to spending now, are back in the Metrodome days. What's the point? What's the point? And I love the Twins. And as you know, Corey, I'm more willing to vouch for this team than most. But it's tough right now. All right, I'm done.
I hate them.
We had such positivity throughout this podcast, and I knew it was going to get to this point. But okay. All right. We'll talk about the cat trade tomorrow. We've gone on long enough, I think.
Yes.
We'll give something to talk about tomorrow. We'll talk about the cat trade because it's still not final yet. And training camp, I think, starts today for the NBA.
Something like that. They play the Lakers on Friday. I know that much. Yeah, lots of cat stuff to talk about.
Technically, they can't even talk about the trade yet because Cat can't even show up to the Knicks. He can't even show up to Madison Square Garden yet because the trade's not officially official. All right, we'll discuss it more tomorrow. I'm CJ. That's Corey. This has been the Morning Sports Desk. Have a Monday, everybody, I guess.
The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WadenaRadio.com.